Welcome to Off the Record News. I'm your host, Diana Longrie. Thank you for tuning in. This program is brought to you live from the SCC studios out of White Bear Lake. And through a cooperative agreement, this program is also simultaneously broadcast to those studios out of the Roseville viewing area, the CTV studios. As a result of this cooperative effort, this program reaches out to and serves live approximately 28 communities in the Northeast metropolitan area. And as you know, tonight being the live program, we encourage you to call in with any questions or comments that you may have either for myself this evening or my guests. I think we're going to have a very lively discussion about a couple of different topics that are very near and dear to these guests' heart. And I do want to mention that for those of you in the St. Paul viewing area, when you watch us on Monday evenings at 8, well, thank you for tuning in. And for those of you in the Town Square viewing area who watch us on Thursday nights at 7, well, I welcome you. Now, this evening, we're going to be turning over, well, the new leaf for the year. And, of course, with the new year comes New Year's resolutions to either, well, lose a little weight or build more business or start on projects that you've been putting off. Well, I think one of the most productive resolutions that anybody can make, certainly at the beginning of this year, is working on how to find more leads for their business, how to build networking with other businesses, and to help, well, basically not only help businesses, individual small businesses and other businesses do better by all doing better, but certainly it will give a jump start to our economy as well when you have businesses being able to find each other and be able to do better in the marketplace. And so I have with me two guests who are going to be talking a little bit about their networking group that they are a part of, and they're going to talk a little bit about that first, and then they're going to talk a little bit about their own individual businesses and really how they have found working with other businesses and how it really all kind of interrelates with this whole topic of building more business for the new year. So with that, I want to thank both of my guests for being here. Thank you, Kevin and Jules, for coming on.
Thank you
for having us.
Yes. And you know, a lot of times my viewers out there, they say, well, you know, where did she find her guests for this evening? And it's kind of ironic, but Kevin and I, we happened to go to a St. Paul Chamber event. It was their free holiday party. Nothing like going to a free event. And I think, Kevin, you were the second to the last person I ran into all night. And I got to tell you, I think the last two people I ran into that evening were the most interesting, that had the most interesting things to talk about. And here you are. Imagine that.
Yeah. You're number two. Number two I've met at St. Paul. So.
There you go. And Jules, thank you also for coming on. I know that you are in the networking group that Kevin's a part of. And before we get started and talk a little bit about the networking group that you are a part of and how, you know, it's really worked well with your business and how it can be utilized. This network or any network can be utilized by business owners. First, give a brief introduction of yourself to our viewers so that they know, well, gee, who are these people anyway? So Jules, let's start with you first.
Okay. Jules Miller and Company is the name of my business. My background is working for graphic design firms, advertising agencies, or companies where I was kind of their marketing manager, creative director, or the artsy-fartsy person in the building, and I answer to any of those.
Oh, very good. Excellent. And Kevin, tell our viewers a little bit about who you are. The short version.
The short version. When I was in second grade, they said I would go into computers, and some of my first projects were feeding 400 paper tapes into convert files for St. Cloud University. From there, I went on got 6 years of formal schooling, 15 years in an earlier life, and then went independent a couple decades ago, and enjoying serving businesses from 1 to 100 million in sales in doing their computers and software and consulting.
That can be a lot. And you know, in this we do have, I've made up a separate screen for the little networking company with networking group, which we'll show in a little bit. But who would like to go first and talk about the network group that you belong to?
I probably would start with that.
Okay.
Keylead.biz is, the idea is to take information from a bunch of groups over the last 5 years. A lot of the groups don't necessarily incorporate good lists, good databases, online, keeping track of the membership. The chambers and stuff do a pretty good job, but there's a lot of people that maybe don't fit into the chamber and need another group. St. Paul Chamber, I met 4 years ago, a person that we've been networking, and I've done over $100,000 of business since in the last 3 years related to that one meeting. Last person to leave the meeting. Part of the key lead is that you find people to network with. We've all got thousands of pictures on Facebook, but taking it a little deeper than that, establishing some relationships so we really understand what a person does, what are the good referrals that they're looking, the good referrals they're looking for. So part of that is understanding to a little bit more depth than just, one meeting a year. You really got to get to know a business to know how to refer a business.
Exactly, and you mentioned a couple of things I think that really stand out to me. One is that you keep a database of the various businesses that are involved and what it is about them that either makes them unique or helps other businesses to understand how they can connect with them. And I think no matter whether or not you're talking about building your business or whether or not, we've got some political candidates out there in TV land, whether or not if they're trying to identify who their voters are and who are their supporters or who they can be working with, it's not really any different. You need to be able to know who your market is and who is it that you're relating to, and the best way you can do that is keeping a database of that information. And I know even from myself that sometimes I find myself writing little notes on the napkins, you know what I mean? And then by the time I get home, well, I've put it in the pile of napkins to sometime stick into a database. So it sounds like you folks, your network is obviously a little more organized than we're just going to store the napkins method.
Correct.
Good.
Yeah. And I've got about a decade of managing, 20, 30, 40, 50 databases. Some of that is people that are key to this group will contribute to the database. That's the whole idea, because and having it in searchable form, because if it's on a database and you can search, the napkins are always somewhere else. The database, eventually we hope to have it so that through a smartphone or a website, members will be able to, dial in and get the information they need rather than searching for it. Let the computer find it quickly, and that's a long-term project, but that's the goal, is to get organized.
We're in the building stage, and I'll confess to having maybe a couple of napkins on my office floor. That's not my brain, but...
Right, exactly. But this idea about having something that is searchable, that the members can then go to and be able to utilize it. I think that is really key, because so oftentimes people do find themselves being part of networking groups, or that they're thinking that they might find connections on Facebook or other places like that. But if you can't really do a search, it's not really very functional, is it?
No, it's worthless.
You can't remember everybody that you've met, that you know, what they do, who they know. So this is kind of a big sharing
Yes.
collaboration.
Exactly. Now, Jules, tell us a little bit, how did you get involved in this networking group?
I don't even know if I can remember where we met,
Main
but
Street.
it was also a networking event, and Kevin is a networking extraordinaire, part of his personality. And I haven't been independent as long as Kevin has, but I mentioned my background, and then I've been a consultant for, I think this is my 7th year, offering marketing, branding, and graphic design.
Oh, yeah.
So we've met and found out that we're belong to some other groups. So you kind of keep running into the same people, and that's who you kind of strike up a friendship with, and start to kind of build a relationship with who do you know and what do you do and what can I help you with, and it's just kind of a round robin.
Exactly. Now, we do have a screen, I believe it's screen number 2, which has some of the contact information, and I always remind the viewers that there's always some moment in the show where they're going to wish they had their paper and pencil. And so eventually, we'll put this up here a couple different times, so that way, if this is something of interest to them, that certainly they can contact the organization or call the phone number and find out how they can get involved in this as well. One of the things that certainly I know that I have always found, because before becoming an attorney, I was in sales, and I was a sales manager. And one of the hardest things, I think, for some of the new salespeople was that they felt like, they didn't always get that first sale, when they went in the door. And this idea that they had to keep going back 2, 3, 4 times, I think that was one of the hardest things, because you always have to worry then, are you going to get rejection that next time? And yet really you need to have a certain number of contacts in order to make the end contact actually come to fruition. And I think that that's really a part that networking groups can play. And you mentioned this, Jules, that you kind of, you go to some of the different meetings or networking gatherings, and you start seeing some of the same people and start building those relationships. And it really is sort of about building relationships, isn't it?
It's all about that, because you're not even really supposed to talk about selling anymore. It's all about cultivating relationships, so people get to know you, trust you, and learn about what you do and what you can offer and how you can trade your services, or who do you know that I could refer you to. And then once you meet that person, I just met somebody this morning that I was referred to because of another networking group that I'm in. And when you meet, it's almost like you kind of know each other a little bit, because you've got that background,
Right.
that referral and background in common, that person.
Exactly. Now, of course, Kevin, because you've been in business quite a long time, you probably have a lot of those kinds of connection stories.
Yeah. I've mined 40 or 50,000 names, and really I have 7 to 8 names per contact, because it's really that third, fourth, and timing, and most of the referrals are second and third layer. So meeting all these, it's not the people you meet, it's who they work with and who they know, and who's the, if you can get to the right people, you can maybe get an interview. If you don't get there, you could meet everybody in Minneapolis and not get anywhere. It's really about getting to that.
Well,
The people that can, actually say whether they want even consider you for.
Right, the decision makers. And that, of course, in the end, is what you ultimately are always trying to figure out. Who is the decision maker when you're talking to somebody about their business or their company, or about what they do or what their needs are? Are they decision maker, or can they put you in contact with that decision maker? Yeah, no, I remember that very clearly as like one of the #1 rules, in sales. You have to figure out who's the decision maker, and even I find because with my law practice, I'm a solo attorney. I only have myself. I'm just people come in the door, they either need some help, and I can help them, or I give them a couple of referrals, and then they go ask somebody else, but still it comes down to, thinking about what are those, those customers' needs. Can you meet their needs? And maybe you can't meet their needs, but maybe somebody else that in your network can. And so while, I'm the only decision maker at my business, sometimes, I'm making that decision that maybe I can't provide the service that this particular client is looking for, but I know somebody else in my network who can. That's right. Now, about how many people would you say are in a Key Lead network right now? Do you have an idea?
That are actually in the network, it's probably 24. It's a small group. I mean, obviously, and part of that is some of the members are in groups that 24 to 100. So, so we have 4 or 5 members that, one of the members that has, 1,700 contacts. So some of our members, well, I mean, it's very key. I mean, part of it is, and through the chambers, through a number of years, trying to get people that are good at networking. So some of the members have extensive lists and extensive contacts and meetings and events and stuff. So there's some, those people can bring a lot of referral sources to the group. So that's
Right, exactly, and maybe you, both of you can speak to this idea too, is that even though maybe there's only around 24 people in this networking group, you mentioned that they are part of other networking groups, and so they know of those kinds of other activities that perhaps might be going with those groups, and then they can say, well, here's this other event going on, it's open for anybody, maybe you'd like to go. I would imagine that you find that that's a great way then to piggyback then onto some of these other networking groups. Go ahead, Jules.
Well, I was going to say it's a lot like LinkedIn, which I never really thought of before, but if you're the person and then you've got your second tier of people that and then it extrapolates out to the tier of all the people that those people know, and when you mentioned the 1,700 people, just of one of the 24 members' contacts, if you do the math, the number is gigantic.
Right.
It's just gigantic, and it doesn't matter how many people it's got to be the right person.
Yeah.
So somebody might have a much smaller group of contacts, but if they're the right people and the decision people, that's all that really matters.
And this is a little off point and a little off topic, but it reminds me of something that occasionally I find myself doing, is on Facebook, you have your events, where you've got events that people have invited you to or that you're going to or whatever. But occasionally I use that feature where it says, look at your friends' events. See, and then you can look at your friends' events, and it's like, well, how come I'm not on that invitation list? That's a great event. I want to go to that. And of course, if it's open, you just say, yes, I'd like to go, and you go. And then you find out, well, this was indeed a great fit, a great place to go. And then it's another way of networking, in other words. But of course, it's a little more loosely organized than what you folks are doing, because you're doing it in a way to build relationships and to build business leads. And I think in this economy, I think that's probably one of the things that really will lend success to successful businesses, don't you think, as to the relationships that they build?
Yeah, and I mean, you have to have a commitment to it also, because you can network day and night, breakfast, lunch, dinner, weekends, you can do social things, you can go to plan meetings, there are speakers, there's, weekend events, so you have to kind of make a commitment to which ones you're going to join, how many you can go to, because they take time.
Right.
And then you have to do the follow-up, which takes more time, but it's so important. You can't just run around to all these meetings and then not do anything with all the people that you just met and all the napkins that you just collected.
Yes, and see, and that's those are very practical tips. So, you know, folks who are out there listening to this, they could come away with several things that you just said there. One is that when you go to these events, pick and choose and prioritize which ones are best suited for what it is that you're looking to accomplish. Two, you have to have a balance between how many you go to, because you got to work also. And three, you have to do follow-up. Otherwise, whatever it was that you did goes to naught. And probably number four, that if you did take notes, make sure that you know where you put your notes and have them in a form that you can actually utilize them. Did I summarize that pretty good?
Yep.
Okay, there you
have
go.
A plan of then what you're going to do with your notes.
There you go, yes.
Because
and then make the
otherwise
plan.
it's just all these names, all these business cards, and then you're just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with... You know, you have to have a plan, and everybody has to have their own plan and kind of how to work the plan.
Right, and I would imagine that also that's a very fundamental rule, is that if, say, you've had some conversation with somebody and you've made a commitment to do something or to produce something or to contact them or whatever, that you actually then do the follow-through so that it isn't just empty words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's not a one-on-one. We had 600 people drop out of the chamber, and they all say, well, I went 3 times, nothing happened. You really, I did a third trade show, and someone said, 2 individuals said, contact us in 3 months. I did, and it ended up being huge, huge. But that was a 9-month process. And everybody thinks, well, you know, I've been doing this for 2 months now, 25 times, when's it going to happen? Most of the stuff takes 3 months to 3 years, and it depends on the type of work you're doing. But it takes months to get trust. You just don't, and everyone calls, well, you follow up call and give me the sale now. It doesn't work that way. It's, you know, you have to realize if it's a good fit and then wait for timing. Everybody's not just waiting today to do what you want to do.
They don't always need what you are willing to, you know.
It's a process.
That particular day.
So that's really key. The follow-up doesn't mean the sale is closed. It just means that you find out whether or not that person is even interested in establishing a relationship over time. And you know, I hate to use the word key, but really key is taking it to a deeper level, because all the Facebook and all the social stuff is only, in fact, many of them, they don't identify yourself. How can you hire somebody that doesn't even have an identity?
Yes.
Yeah, you know,
absolutely.
Are you really a business, or are you a picture out in the sky?
Yeah, that's right. A cyber person. Yeah, a cyber person. And I think you've made some very good points there, in that it isn't something that just is going to happen overnight. You do have to have perseverance, and you have to, like you said, it can take time, because maybe somebody is just finishing up a contract and they're just not at the right point to enter into something new or to find a new vendor or whatever it is. Or as time goes on, maybe something has happened with that relationship, and as you mentioned, timing can be the most important thing, because then you just happen to be there at that moment, and since they've seen you for, you know, the last few months, whatever it is, and now this contract, somehow or other, it just didn't work out right, well, now they're suddenly in the market, and there you are, just like that. Yes. I think those are very good points. Now, I want to make sure, again, let's put up the screen so that way our viewers at home, again, can see the website and the phone number, so they have an opportunity of being able to write that down. And now, are there specific times when your network group meets, or how does this work if somebody wants to become involved?
They contact the website and the phone number, make contact with the group. Our meetings are usually monthly, and they are by invite only, so part of our group is you know, if somebody is you know, selling concrete or something, they might not be right for the group. But the existing memberships help pick out people that will come in and help each other network, expand the network so that we have some synergies between the members and not just a collection of anybody that wants to join. So we ask them to call, and we're pretty open to having people come and learn what many people have multiple businesses.
Yes.
And one of the things about this group is we don't have any restriction that you can only have one specialty. We assume that people, if someone has 4 specialties, they're more special than someone that just has a single business, because there's more potential connections that can be made. So we encourage people to wear many hats and be networking gurus that can bring a lot to the party. So
That's great. Now, I know some networking groups, they also have some restrictions on their membership, in that they say, well, if we've already got 5 insurance guys, we aren't taking any more insurance guys because, well, we've got our fill of those slots in our group. Do you look at that?
Lots of times it's one insurance guy.
Yeah, there you
and
go.
then you can't even get into that group. But I was going to say, what happens in ours then is we find that with the different people and the different industries that they're in, we can almost make these mini networking, what were we calling them?
Sub-meetings.
Not pods, because I don't like that.
Yeah.
But, like mini networking groups within our big group.
Oh, sure.
So because I'm in the creative world, then I'm going to be attracted to the other creatives in the group, because we can really partner together, and we really understand what each of those people do. It's not as hard for us to understand. And Kevin's in, the computer, server, router, all these
phone
that are
systems.
just in my utility room that I don't really know what they do, but they make me mad when they don't work. But he's going to be, in a smaller group with more of those types of people.
Right, and I can see again too, when you do it that way, because you probably have overlapping clients or purposes, it would be good to do that grouping.
That's where we can really
Yes.
partner together well. So if I'm on a project and I need a specific sort of writer that I don't do, I know a bunch of writers that all have, different specialties, techniques, styles. Maybe it's a photographer, maybe it's a printer, maybe it's another designer, maybe it's a web designer. And then, we can partner together on jobs, because none of us can do it all.
Exactly. Well, that sounds really unique, and a unique way of being able to approach it, and saying, well, let's say if there's a project, we can pull in different people from our network to work on this. And I think being, probably for the most part, you're mostly self-employed people, or I guess I don't really know. Probably you have a mixture of all kinds of businesses, maybe.
Yeah, pretty much small business, predominantly. There are some people that work, for somebody else. And some people that have, a side business or a extra business, or,
I see, sure.
It's maybe more of a hobby, but maybe they want that hobby to someday be their business,
and
so
see,
that
now
then they don't have to work
exactly.
for somebody
Now
else.
that's a really good point as well, that for networking, let's say if it is your side job, I mean, you've got your full-time day job, whatever it is, but that's not really your dream. Your dream is really the little thing that you do on the evenings and the weekends that you're trying to build up to be sustainable, so that you can leave that other job. And certainly networking, I think, can help those folks too build their business as well, because one day they will get to that point where that is going to be their bread and butter.
Yeah, people want to do what their passion is.
Yeah, well, why not? I might as well have fun. You got to work, might as well be fun. Exactly. Now, I want to make sure that we give each of you enough time to talk a little bit specifically about the kind of work that you do, that you're passionate about, and then, maybe even share some stories about how you have, found that networking has helped you in your business, and, whatever you know, as an example to our viewers. Jules, do you want to get started first?
Sure. I offer marketing, branding, and graphic design to mostly small businesses, entrepreneurial people. And at the very beginning, you said something about the new year and a new identity, which is a perfect segue into, you know, talking about businesses needing a new look, and through an identity of their business and the person. And it might be, you know, a logo, it might be marketing materials, it might be a website, it could be anything that's got anything to do with, you know, something being created, written about, designed, published, printed. And that's kind of one of my niches is, you know, I'm kind of like the image doctor for people's companies that maybe they haven't done anything to their materials for way too long. There are trends with colors, there's trends with fonts, and when you see something, or I see it, I know pretty darn fast how old it is, because it's just like decorating. And, you know, there's colors and things that remind you of a certain decade or something. And if something gets too old and kind of fuddy-duddy looking, or that's my word, it just kind of looks like either, you know, you haven't paid any attention to it for a while. And it's not always a good, the best representation.
Right, that your image has been on autopilot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing that happens is people, because they're entrepreneurs, because they're small business owners, they're trying to do everything themselves. They're trying to wear way too many hats, and they're trying to do creative stuff. And not everybody's creative. And, you know, people say that to me all the time. I don't have a creative bone in my body. And I'm like, give it to me. Because I always have been. And when you said something about second grade, that reminded me of a story that in second grade, I won the spelling bee, which does not sound very creative at all, but I have always been a reader. My dad was in education, and literacy was important. And that's my other niche, is I turned into a kind of a self-made proofreader, editor, writer, so I can take that part of my brain, I'm just very right brain, left brain, and can do the very picky stuff to make documents, you know, can be pretty or not so pretty. I've read plenty of legal things, plenty of annual reports that are hundreds and hundreds of pages long. And the periods have got to be in exactly the right place. The dollar signs had better be in the right place. And you combine that then with the graphic design to make things pretty, you know, what some people call it, but I call it visually appealing.
Right.
And interesting, and it's a brand that then is going to represent what you do and what your company provides, whatever your product and service is. And these days, it's all about standing out, differentiating yourself, making yourself memorable, so that you then are going to then stand out so that people can remember you.
Yeah. And when you were describing, you know, the you know, what you were saying is looking at the creation of the image and the font or the colors or whatever, as opposed to proofreading and looking at are the periods in the right place and whatever. Certainly, I think both of those take attention to detail. And
it is my middle name, and it's what I'm known for.
And that really, I think, is the one thing that ties those two, what seem very different aspects of what you do, that ties the two of them together, is attention to detail. Because there's not really any creativity having to do with where that period goes and to make sure it's in the right spot.
No.
And to do proofreading. There's no creativity in that. Actually, creativity isn't allowed.
Right.
But attention to detail is required, as to, and also when you're looking at those fonts and I didn't realize that actually with fonts that there's trends in fonts. I mean, I've heard of colors that, you know, this year's color is green or whatever.
Actually, I think it's called honeysuckle rose.
Oh, I see.
And I don't know the exact number, but it just came up on the website on New Year's Day, the Pantone Color of the Year, I think it's called. It's this, beautiful coral pink. And I kind of looked at it and went, I thought they had that last year. And I was like, no, that was like a corally something, and it was close. But when you're a designer, color is just, it's huge.
Yeah.
And when we came tonight and you said, oh, good, you don't have on a white shirt, I don't know that I own anything white because I can't think of anything less interesting than it's such a non-color.
I couldn't agree with you more. Certainly, I don't know that I
It's a
have
blog
much
idea.
in the white either. Right. And I think certainly for our viewers to hear though that there are trends in fonts.
Yep.
That is just totally intriguing.
You should
Totally
have seen these
intriguing.
crazy
Did you know
ones
that-
I just saw for
Kevin,
Halloween.
Kevin, did you know that they had fonts as trend fonts? No.
No,
He
absolutely.
knows that I'm itching to
Oh.
do a project.
Yeah, I actually.
I see. Oh, I see. Okay, I can see where the networking's already been working
yeah,
here.
I actually have
Good.
a marketing degree in sales interest,
Oh.
and also was a Mac tech support for 10 years, so I have that creative and sales is kind of one of my.
Yeah.
Therein lies, I actually enjoy the sales process, and was a reseller for 15 years, sell 250,000 products. So when you get to my segment, I'll give you a little more on that.
You jump right on in right now. Sounds like it's, but I think one of the things too that, again, I think which is so important when you're working in networking, and you've already started to mention about it when you're talking about your background, is being able to relate to people and talking with people and listening to what they have to say and hearing what it is that they need. Whether or not, Jules, you're doing it and trying to figure out how to do that logo, or you're hearing what they need and setting up their security for their computers or whatever, you have to hear what their business need is. Isn't that true?
Absolutely. And it's a long process. It's usually not black and white. I usually say it takes 1 to 3 years to kind of get to the point where it needs to be. Most people think they can just go online and order any one of 15,000 products.
Yeah.
And there's really a process involved.
Right.
And I come from in the computer background, I come as systems analyst, so I'm looking for people that don't want a Band-Aid but want a long-term solution to how they're spending their money, because it's very easy to spend money, but if you have to re-spend it next year, talking about trends, the 5-year trend right now is the whole industry is going to 1-year warranty from a 5-year warranty scenario.
Oh, really?
About 70 or 80% of warranties are out to lunch. So you spend $500 installing a system and then you replace it for $100, but it's not the fact that you can replace it for $100. You're going to have to spend a week resetting up the software and the settings and selecting. Very expensive to replace things every other year, and it's a trend right now that customers are very angry. Why am I redoing this at a year and a half out? The whole industry is, so it's a trend that is people need to be careful of, because
it sounds
you
like
spend the money and the warranty is not there next year.
Right.
And there's not a lot that can be done. It actually has to be a part of your strategy. You know, the fact that you spend $5,000 doesn't matter when the warranty's gone. It's gone.
It sounds like, maybe to sum it up, that the trend is becoming disposable.
Absolutely.
And certainly that's what it appears to me when you're saying that warranties are going from 5 years to 1 year. Well, that just means to me that they're built to be disposable, the products. And that really is a shame, because, again, if you're looking at a business and you have invested a lot of money into your equipment and your software and the man hours to put it all together, and then find out in a year or two that you have to do it all over again, that really can have an impact on a business's bottom line. And certainly in the even maintaining the reliability of their data. Maybe you'd like to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, the failure rates used to be third and fourth, fifth year out. The failure rates now are hitting first, second year. So if you don't have backup and if you don't have redundancy, at the second and third year you're playing roulette with your data. And I get that during the summer, during the storms and stuff. I normally 5-10 calls in a month where it's too late. It's too late at that point, and hundreds of dollars of backups can be much less expensive. Normally, if you go into data recovery, you're talking $1,000 to $5,000 to recover data. So the insurance policy is now have some redundancy and backup, and if the warranties are gone, you're going to be paying for that replacement of your data and your systems and stuff. So you probably want to have not buy them all once thinking they're going to last for 5 years. Stagger your purchases. Make sure you have backups, and make sure that, just like when you're investing in stocks, don't have all your money stuck in a few boxes. It's a recipe for disaster. And it's not going to be, you're not going to want to know what it costs to do that. So.
Wow, interesting. Now you understand that we do have a caller on the line who's either got a question or a comment. So let's invite them to join us, and let's see what's on their mind. Caller, thank you for waiting. Questions or comments for us this evening?
Mayor Longrie, excellent show. I really enjoyed this show tonight. These guests are different than what you normally have in this idea of branding and trends. And I just picked up here a moment ago that you said that the trend is for having everything being disposable. Actually, I thought the trend was more towards the sustainability, and with younger people, they were looking more towards reuse and recycling and sustainable. And I was under the impression, actually, there was kind of a push, and I thought it was a trend that things were built for long-term sustainability, renewable, whether you're talking about energy or anything like that. The other question I have is this question about how the trend has actually been that people have been losing all their privacy, whether they're in their new car with the GPSs or their cell phones or all their credit card information. And I was wondering if you're expert, how do they look at this whole thing of data privacy and the privacy of individuals, what they're doing as in this trend concept? Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, caller, for those questions. Certainly, now the first comment or observation that the caller was making was that there seems sort of to be a conflict between what's being manufactured and the trends for disposability versus what the public policy is out there for that we're being told as a society that we want to be working towards sustainability, and that you can keep reusing things and just try to make everything last longer so that you don't have to build it and throw it. From your perspective in working with computers and electronics, does anyone ever talk about sustainability?
Well, that's one of my specialties, but there's two parts to it. There's fads, and the renewable stuff is a fad, and there are some of the computers where you can, in a 2-year period, you can pay for the new equipment the new equipment is more efficient. So there's parts of it that are valid. The fad that everybody talks about is the cloud, and guess what? That is a trend where everything all your credit cards, all your bank accounts, all your friends, all your clients are all out in the cloud. And isn't that wonderful if the cloud has some people that you don't know? So the trend is to just throw it out in the cloud. Now you're trusting your security and all your valuables out in the cloud. It's a trend that most computer consultants are jumping on because there's big commissions and it's the new trend. being an early adopter of those trends, sometimes those trends take 1 to 5 years. And if you're in those first 2 or 3 years of the cycle, guess what? You're debugging, or you're paying the price for that new technology evolving. So I think all the renewable stuff, there's parts of it that are good. There's parts of it that, you got to analyze things and realize just because it's the fad doesn't mean it's the right fad to be on top of. Usually I say second or third year. If you're the early adopter, you're the person that's working the bugs out of that new technology, that new fad. And the reverse is true. If you're on the 5-10 year side of things where you never adopt anything new, well then you're driving down the road in those Model T vehicles and you're not getting to destination fast because you're doing the reverse of it. So you have to hit somewhere in the middle and be careful of the trends, because the trends, I've seen 20 or 30 trends in 20 years, every 2 or 3 years, and guess what? A third or half of those trends become faulty. So if you're always jumping on trends, you're going to be spending a lot of money on things that don't really become stable, long-term, viable technologies.
And certainly I think as a business, if you are jumping on every single trend that's coming down the pike, you're going to find yourself spinning your wheels, because you establish one set of protocols thinking, okay, this is what we're going to do, but then that doesn't work, so then you have to switch gears and determine a whole new set of protocols and get your employees all trained on whatever that software is, and then try it and I could see where that would actually be very non-productive. And so this idea of wait a few years until let the other people work out the bugs probably is really good advice. So for viewers out there, mark that one down.
And with equipment, it's probably more about not sustainability, but more of the recycling that you can do with your ink cartridges, or now you can bring your printer back and they'll give you money towards a new printer. I mean, you didn't used to be able to do that. Or you can refill your cartridges, and on the design side now there's like green paper and green ink, and a lot of the printers have to conform to a lot of requirements for printing with their big printing facilities, and the fumes and the waste, the paper waste, and how they recycle everything. And the trees, I mean, it gets, you can go, there's a big, story behind that also.
Right. And I think that certainly businesses of all sizes can certainly look at what their computer needs are, or their electronic, or their, whatever their paper needs or printer needs might be, and no matter what size they are, that they can try to figure out how to best be energy efficient based on their size.
Environmentally friendly.
Yeah, and that there, and I think there's, I've even heard that there's folks out in the market there someplace who actually can help people to figure that out. Maybe folks know people in your network that can figure that out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, virtualization, which is really what cloud technology is evolving to. I've got 7 of my computers. I used to have 14 computers in my business, and now I've taken that down to 5. I've got one of my computers, a $50 drive, has 7 computer systems on it. So most of the computers now have from 4 to 32 computer systems on a single chip. So you can run 4 or 5 computers on a single box. So that's where very cost effective. And the other part of it is you can have one of your system duplicated on another computer, so that if you've got 5 computers, and you can duplicate all 5 of those computers on a single computer on a drive. Very cost effective. It's under your control. It's sophisticated. It's not for everyone, but the power consumptions, most computers run at 5 or 10%. So if you have 10 computers at 5%, you're only running at 50%. So electricity, you can pay for a couple new computers by economizing some of those machines. And then if one of the machines fails, you can simply, it's duplicated. You go to that machine. So that is, and cloud computing does have those things, and as it evolves, it will. That is a benefit, because you'll have your computers duplicated out in the cloud. So cloud is not all faulty. It's evolving technology, and you need to understand the right implementation of it.
Now, and for some of our viewers out there, they may not be familiar with what cloud technology is. So could you give them just like a quick description of what it is, or?
It's moving your computer onto the internet. So all your files would resolve in a server room in Chicago or Texas, or in two places. So it's basically putting all your data and letting someone else manage that, rather than it being in your office. You're basically accessing all your data off-site in the cloud, and the advantages there is redundancy, and you can have, if your building burns down, your data is still out in the cloud or at the location. So there's a reason the technology is taking off, because a lot of small businesses, when they're theft or fire or employee theft, there's all these things. It's a security choice where you're offloading that for someone else to manage. So if you pick the right providers, it's good. You need to, and sometimes a balance or a mix. It depends on the business. But if the people making those decisions have to be careful, because as there's 10,000 companies out there doing cloud computing. Guess what? A lot of small businesses fail. So if you invest everything you've got in a small startup business that's gone next year, your stuff might be gone with it, with the failure. So you need to. It's complex. Don't take one person's word for what needs to happen. Get advice from several people and make an informed decision.
Yes,
before you jump in.
It's 10 o'clock p.m. Do you know where your data is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Jules, we have only like about 10 minutes left of the program, and I'm sure that we have some viewers out there who are wondering, now when you sit down with a business owner and you're looking at their logos, or you're looking at their color schemes or whatever, kind of what's the checklist like that you run through? Just to give them sort of a brief view here. Kevin has kind of told us what he does. He goes and he looks at their equipment and figures out what their business needs are and how would be best to secure their data and set up their processes. But yours is a little bit more creative. It's not as concrete.
It's black and white.
Yeah. So how do you narrow down all the choices?
I always say it depends, because it isn't that black and white, but, generally just I want to see what people have, and sometimes people just have a business card. Sometimes they just have a website. Sometimes they have, things that they've inherited through the business, and it's like, oh, we never use that. And I always say, bring me everything you've got, and I need a big table. And we spread it all out. Tell me about this piece and this, and what do you use this for, and how about this, and do you like it? And when I start hearing, we never use it, or I don't even know why we have that anymore, then I start making two piles. Let's do away with that. I'm very efficient and economical, so I like to combine things and make one piece maybe work 2 or 3 different ways. A lot of small business people are on a budget. I totally understand that. Sometimes people can just do one project a month or one project a year, or they have X amount of marketing dollars and they're like, what should I do first? And I help them plan. This is the most important pieces for you, which might be different than you or you. This is the order of how you should organize your pieces, and some people only need a business card, and then they need a website, and maybe the website is just informational. Sometimes it's just visual, just for people to look at and get ideas. Sometimes it's to sell things. That's a totally different kind of a website. Sometimes it's very flowery writing to get people in a particular frame of mind. That's another website. So, and plenty of people don't need a website, they need a brochure. They are calling on customers and they need something to leave behind. That's what it's called, to leave behind, because the person isn't going to make up their mind right that minute during the meeting, oh, I'm going to buy X or Y from you. They want this brochure or this leave behind flyer so that later at their convenience they can read it, learn more about the person, the company, and maybe, you know, a week or a month or whenever later, that's when they're going to call back my client to say, I was reading your materials, interested in this, can we talk about that, you know, follow up.
And you mentioned something I found very fascinating. Not everybody needs a website. And I think many times people jump to the conclusion that as soon as they start a business, they have to have a website, when in reality, maybe the website isn't really the best use of their time and energy, because based upon their business model or who their clients are, maybe that website actually is not all that functional for them.
That's one of the first things I say to people when they bring up a website. I just say, well, what are you going to do with it? What do you want it to do for you? And if it's just kind of in the background wallpaper, I'm like, well, let's put it on the list. But it's far more important that you have a good business card with an identity, with obviously your contact information. You're not going to meet somebody for the first time and say, oh, check out my website, which a lot of people do, but I don't know, I don't really like that, because you then have to count on that person remembering the website. They got to write it down. They got to go back to their office and do it, and then they got to have the time to look at it and read it. And maybe they're a paper person and they want a brochure, they want sell sheets, they want a company brochure. And, you know, it just kind of depends on what people's priorities are. So, you know, sometimes it's number 3 on the list, sometimes it's 2, but I don't find that it's generally number 1, because even if you're a guy in a pickup that owns a construction company, you've got to have a business card. You don't need a website that day. But, you know, generally you're probably going to need it at some point. I'm not saying that people don't need them.
But I think that's
immediate.
a very good observation, that you have to take a look at what your business is and who your customers or your clients, your audience, and then prioritize those dollars and how you're going to best present yourself. And of course, when it comes to the technology needs, how to best prioritize your dollars to determine what trend you should follow, or if you want to go with the old standbys, or maybe invest a little bit more in backups. I heard that very strong and clear. Invest in backups.
Well, I got in trouble because of my backup system, and I'm pretty glad I backed up yesterday, so I can say that. But just because Kevin's got his phone in his hand, it just made me think that because there's so many things we can do with our smartphones now, that's actually, you know, ties in with the websites, which ties in with our networking group. That we, you know, can do a lot on our phones. And when you talked about the cloud, you know, we were out in your parking lot using the phone, and, you know, we took a wrong turn, and, you know, we had the GPS, but we could go to the cloud, and, you know, if I wanted to show you something on my computer, well, I don't have to now bring my laptop. I go to the phone, and obviously it's just this big, but I can show you my website, you know, and there it is.
And real quick, before we end our show, let's put up that website, speaking of websites, and put that up one more time, so that way our folks at home can see it. And we are out of time, folks. Imagine that. Such a great show. We could have talked for at least another hour, I'm sure of it. Kevin, you have one last statement here.
The last comment I would make is that if you do it in national business, or if you're working with several thousand people, you can't necessarily always have a relationship. And for the more long-term or established or suppliers, I won't do business with many people as far as buying product if they don't have a website, just because I have nothing to research them by. So more established businesses or businesses that are selling products, if you don't know what you're buying, how can you buy? So smaller business is a little different story.
Yep. Well, again, I want to thank both of you for coming on the program this evening. It's been a pleasure. Hope you can come back again some other time. And for our viewers out there, I want to thank you for tuning in to this week's program. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
No, we...